A very important part, variables. A variable is anything that can take on differing or varying values. Variables can be discrete, male or female, or continuous, that is age. A measurable characteristic that varies, it may change from group to group, person to person, or even within one person over time. A characteristics number or quantity that increases or decreases over time or takes different values in different situations. A variable is an object, event, idea, feeling, time period, or any other type of category you are trying to measure. There are two types of variable, independent and dependent variable, are given a special name that only applies to experimental investigations. One is called dependent variable and the other is the independent variable. What is independent variable? So in research study, scientists define independent and dependent variable to understand cause and effect relationship. They design control experiment setting in which they measure how independent variable influence dependent variables. Learning what independent variables are and how they work in research context can help you understand how to identify them in your own experiment. The independent variable is the condition that acts on the dependent variable, and the dependent variable is the condition that researcher measures to understand the degree to which the independent variable cause an effect. Dependent variables are what scientists are testing or studying since they depend on another factor. For example, if a pharmacologist wants to measure the effectiveness of a new medication in relieving cold symptoms, they would design an experiment in which they administer the drug and measure the extent to which it relieves the participants. In this experiment, the medication is the independent variable because it acts on the symptoms. The cold symptoms are dependent variable because they depend on the influence of the independent variable. So why do you think independent variables are important? As they are essential to effective experimental design because they allow scientists to identify cause and effect relationship. In a controlled experiment, researcher work to minimize or eliminate the potential for external influences so they can make conclusion about how one variable influence another. To achieve this goal, they define one or more independent variable which they apply to the dependent variable. Then they measure the effect of independent variable on the dependent to understand the degree to which the independent influence the dependent variable. By eliminating external influences, scientists can draw reasonable conclusion about these relationships. The researchers generally use IV, that is independent variable, when they are conducting an experiment. Even informal experiments typically have independent and dependent variables. For example, if you have blisters on your feet after your daily run, you may conduct an informal experiment to determine which of your running shoes is most comfortable. You may try wearing one pair of shoes for a week and assess how your feet feel after each run. Then you may try another pair during the next week. So in this experiment, the IV are the shoes and the DV are your feet. So IV also helps you gather evidence and draw conclusion about topic in more formal experiments. A formal experiment may implement more control to prevent external factors from influencing the result. For example, a shoe company might conduct a formal experiment on the comfort of one line of shoes. A company's researchers may implement control by having participants wear the same type of socks each day and run at the same rate for the same time or distance. This can help researcher minimize the number of external variables that may affect the result of their experiments. Examples of independent and dependent variable in experimental research. Independent, type of treatment, different types of drug treatments or psychological treatments. Whereas behavioral variable, measures of adjustment, activity level, eating behavior, smoking behavior. Treatment factors, brief versus long term. Treatment, inpatient versus outpatient treatment. Physiological variable, measures of physiological responses such as heart rate, blood pressure, and brainwave activity. Experimental manipulations, types on beverage consumed, alcohol versus non-alcoholic. Self-report variable, measures of anxiety, mood, or marital or life satisfaction. So in social science research, in psychology, sociology, and criminology use I and DV to study the relationship between people and society. For example, a psychology research may develop an experiment to understand how early childhood attachment influence anxiety in adults. In their experiment, the researcher identifies the independent variable as early childhood attachment, since they predict the attachment styles influence adult anxiety. They collect information about participants' attachment styles and correlate them with their anxiety levels to assess whether there's significant cause and effect relationship between the variables. In medical research, in pharmacy research, scientists use clinical studies to evaluate the effectiveness and safety of new medications. So, when testing the effectiveness of a new drug, the independent variable is the medication, and the dependent variable is the health of the research subject. So, the researchers want to understand how the medications affect the subject health, and their health depends on the influence of the medications. So these types of experiments and what they measure in market research when they are done. So many businesses use market research practices to understand their target customers and consumers' behavior. They also apply formal research methods when looking to improve their strategy. So they also apply formal research methods when looking to improve their strategy for finding and serving customers. For example, businesses that wants to update its online store may test several page layout options with a focus group that represents its core customer base. The business's goal is to make the page more efficient and reduce the time that customers need to spend to complete their transactions. So in this experiment, the IV is the page layout and the DV is the time spent on the page. By changing the page layout, the business hopes to influence how much time users spends on it. So the businesses can test multiple layouts and assess how they affect each user's time on the page. Using IV can also help business improve their work processes. For instance, the human resources department of a business may conduct experiments to assess the effectiveness of a current policies and plan revision to improve workflows. So if the HR department notices the employee productivity declines at a certain time each day, it may conduct an experiment to see if implementing a short structure break period at the same time each afternoon improves employee productivity. So in this experiment, the IV is the break period and the DV is the employee productivity.